Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you kindly as ever for stopping by. I had a very early morning start today. I went to be part of a panel that Debal hosts on NTV. Very esteemed guests, including Kiprono Kitoni, who's head of the Kenya National Chamber, the AFDB's Gabriel Nagatu, Polack, Igathi, the Deputy Governor of Nairobi, amongst others, and and the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange. So it was a very interesting and lively discussion. And this was a morning shot I took just before 6 a.m. in Nairobi, between the New Stanley and Nation Centre. Macro thoughts, dollar index about to break down hard to 89. I'm increasingly inclining to this view, actually. Take a look at the chart, the key level, which I've been speaking about ad infinitum, probably ad nauseam, is the 93.50 level. We lose that, and we're going down very sharply indeed. The US debt ceiling raising the roof since the 1940s. That was a tweet from David Inglis, and we're in the trillions of dollars now. I like this quote from Future-Proof Africa. Exponential growth happens at the end of chaos. Linear growth no longer the norm. That's Paul Virilio's theory as well. Speed. My view right now from my suite at Fairmont, Mount Kenya Safari Club, it doesn't get much better than this, Mr. Scott Eddy, who's been on a visit to the Mara and now to the Fairmont Mara and now to the Mount Kenya Safari Club, both of which are fabulous destinations, which I enjoy myself. I wrote in February 2012 that the Mount Kenya Safari Club in Nanyuki was founded in 1959. It became a mecca for the international jet set. We were not going as far as that, only 2 days' journey in the ox cart to a bit of El Dorado my father had been fortunate enough to buy in the bar in the Norfolk Hotel from a man wearing an old Etonian tie. So says Elsford Huxley's The Flame Trees of Thika, which is a beautiful and a lyrical book. Mount Kenya Safari Club in Nanyuki was founded in 1959, became a mecca for the international jet set. The property sits on the slopes of Mount Kenya. I've sat at the bar, which is, by the way, called the Z-Bar, and half expected William Holden or Adnan Khashoggi to pop in. My most intense memory is of discovering a complete film studio on the grounds and walking around that studio in the evening light alone. This is a photograph that I took of the sunrise tinting the clouds of Mount Kenya when we were staying there one early morning. I'm very much looking forward to watching this big boxing fight between Floyd Mayweather and Mr. Connor. This is going to be, they are extraordinary gentlemen. I was going through their Twitter feeds. Floyd seems to be an inveterate gambler and a Dolce Vita fellow. And Connor, obviously it's his big payday. It's saying he's not here to take part, he's here to take over. From a tweet, Floyd Mayweather, let them tell you how they're living, and I'll show you how I'm living one of my estates. And I was having a discussion with somebody about this, and I was saying that, I remember the middleweight boxers of Thomas Hetman Hearn, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. There was one other whose name has popped out of my head. That was sort of the apex, the apogee of boxing. Other than, of course, heavyweight boxing, which is very different. These guys are lighter, quicker, very enjoyable to watch. Political reflections, politics and economics have decoupled a lot in recent years. This was a quote from Polack. And politicians populate an insulated world of their own while companies live in another sphere. and made me think of many things. But look at the profile of how the market trades with geopolitical risk. That was an interesting graph that came in that article. Police used pepper spray to disperse protesters at Trump's Phoenix rally. This was a photograph from Reuters Politics. And, I just don't know what to say. Look at this tweet from Kurt Eichenwald. I saw this research on signs of a cult leader, signs of a cult. So sit back and crack open a Cult 45 and see if this sounds familiar. Telegraph had a cartoon, President Trump. And then Clinton in her book says Trump's debate stalking made her skin crawl. Former Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton says in her new book, Donald Trump made her skin crawl by stalking her around the stage in a campaign debate, and she wonders if she would have told him to back up, you creep. In audio excerpts of the book What Happened, aired on Wednesday on MSNBC, Clinton described her 2016 campaign as joyful, humbling, infuriating, just plain baffling, and acknowledged she failed her millions of supporters by losing to Trump in the November election. In the excerpts, Clinton described the October 9 debate in St. Louis, in which Trump followed her closely about the stage, lurking behind her as she fielded questions from a live television audience. The debate came 2 days after an audio tape emerged in which Trump was heard bragging about groping women. This is not okay, I thought, Clinton says. It was the second presidential debate, and Donald Trump was looming behind me. And this goes back, he's a linguistic warfare specialist, and he was a specialist in dominating the room. And she was at the sharp end of that domination. Narcissism hashtags in Louise Linton's second big public mistake. New Yorker. Extraordinary story. Western Europe, for all the noise, accounted for less than 1% of the 34,676 people killed in terror attacks in 2016. Middle East and North Africa bore the brunt of last year's violence, according to figures from the Global Terrorism Database maintained by the University of Maryland. Wednesday's reports in Western Europe suffered 269 out of a total of 13,488 attacks, and 0.7% of the victims. In contrast, attacks killed 19,121 people in North America, North Africa, and the Middle East, 55% of total. Kenya, quite a large share, I'm sure. Let's move on to the markets. Plenty going on. WPP shares had their biggest drop in 17 years. I met Sir Martin Sorrell many years ago in London. Interesting Napoleonic type of character, isn't he? Had their biggest drop in 17 years after the world's largest advertising company cut its full-year revenue forecast and lower spending by customers, in particular consumer goods manufacturers. The stock fell as much as 12%, then fell even more. Said like-for-like revenue growth is expected to be between 0 and 1% in 2017. That's down from an earlier 2% forecast. The stock fell as much as 12%. Advertising companies worldwide are being hit as their biggest clients, who face slow global economic growth and technological disruption, increasingly focus on cost-cutting to preserve margins. London-based WPP singled out ad spending on consumer goods. Items such as laundry detergent and toothpaste that make up about 1/3 of its revenue is coming under particular pressure. Unilever, one of WPP's biggest customers, said earlier this year it was reducing spending on ad production by 30%, and that it would halve the number of creative agencies it works with to 1,500 from 3,000. In the last year or so, growth has become even more difficult to find. Martin Sorrell, for the short term, we have to weather the storm. Take a look at this chart from Bloomberg Surveillance from yesterday. Very sharp slump. We've got to keep an eye on that whole advertising business. Is it a precursor? Is it signaling something different? Or is it just signaling technological disruption and increased spending in-house onto online platforms? Currency markets, euro dollar 117.86. Dollar index in big trouble now. Can't seem to hold that key area of 93. 93.50, indicating to me that something like the dollar yen could go to 104. Japanese yen 109.35, Swiss franc 0.9651, the pound 127.86. I'm looking for 125. The Australian dollar 0.7878. India rupee 64.075, South Korean won 11.2841, the Rial 3.1409, Egyptian pound 17.70, and the South African rand 13.1825. The dollar index, and this is a tweet from J.S. Blockland, has fallen to an interesting level, and this was the chart I've been looking to show you. Look at that level I've been speaking about, 93.58. Look at it across. It held the line. Therefore, when it doesn't hold the line, that signals a very big breach. It's a little bit like a dam bursting, and it doesn't look as if it can hold on anymore. Euro dollar, where are we now? 117.87. The consensus, in my opinion, is seriously extreme on the upside. Looking for 120, it seems that whatever I read is assuming that 120 is just around the corner. It always makes me worried. The pound fell to its lowest level since June against the dollar, currently at 127.86, and my target is now 125, the figure. Do you think we get to parity, dust off those euro-sterling forecasts, as David Inglis? This has been the extraordinary rand higher in the euro versus the pound. If you work there, interesting stuff is going to happen. It's like, what's he going to do next? Shoot off a rocket? Imagine the publisher of Pornhub.com being asked to address Harvard University graduates on the virtues of running a socially responsible business. That's basically what happened in Japan this past December, when the country's most prestigious private university extended an invitation to adult entertainment mogul Keishi Kamiyama. It's quite a story. It may seem strange that the operator of an online mall for hardcore sex videos has won such public acceptance, but Japan has always had a sort of look the other way tolerance for pornography. More significantly, Kamiyama has expanded into an eclectic portfolio of businesses that now include a currency trading platform, video games, an online English school, and solar farms. Last year, porn was less than a third of the group's $1.7 billion in sales. People are starting to realize just how smart this guy is. He's extremely forward-looking, and the way he puts cash to work is just very, very smart. Russian bank pioneers find a new kick, marijuana. Read that, go to the link on Rich Wrap-Ups. It's a Bloomberg article. Commodity markets, well, let's go and have a look at that. Bloomberg Industrial Metals Index has advanced almost 30% this year. And that index includes, that's the base industrial metals index, whilst energy, agriculture, and precious metals are negative. To get a sense of the momentum behind the current rally in base metals, take a look at the relative performance of other commodities in the past 12 months. Bloomberg's Industrial Metals Index has advanced almost 30%. Goldman Sachs, this is via T Commodity, comments on oil, and I could not agree more with what they're saying. Read it. They're talking about weakness in Q4. My crude oil price for this year target was $32. We just need one print, but we're currently at $48.18. Gold, last time I looked, 1288.25. We've been repelled a number of times above 1300. Well, I think we probably need something like a nuclear bomb to get it through there. Maybe not. Let's see. Mongolia, anyone? Junkier sovereign debt pays less than 6% as recently as 1999. Investors seeking a 6% yield on a government bond could afford 10-year US treasuries. These days, they can't even get that from Mongolia. Central bank bond buying has compressed yields in developed markets to unprecedented levels, pushing investors further down the risk spectrum in a hunt for higher returns. Yields on Mongolian dollar bonds maturing in 2021 fell below 6% for the first time on record. late last month after dropping 3.5 percentage points this year. Yields on 2019 maturity Ukrainian debt, 7-year Belarusian bonds issued in June have also moved below 6% in the past 2 months. All three former communist countries have a Bloomberg composite rating of CCC plus, or 7 levels below investment grade. Owned by Ukraine. Large power. It's totally broke. Junk grades everywhere in Africa, yet bond yields don't show it. Every African nation that sold dollar debt now has at least one junk grade, but it would be hard to tell by looking at the bond market. The average yield on sovereign Eurobonds in Africa has hovered near the lowest level in 2 years this month, according to a Standard Bank index. Even after Moody's Investors Service cut Namibia to below investment grade on August 11, the world's biggest producer of marine diamonds was the continent's only dollar bond issuer without a junk rating. Low rate environment in the developed world has been encouraging investors to look past the problems plaguing African economies, including low commodity prices, dollar shortages in some of them, and rising political tensions in others. The dynamics around African Eurobonds are mostly driven by external rather than domestic factors, said Ronak Gopaldas. Since late 2014, the continent's economic fortunes have declined due to the combination of bad luck and own goals. But as poorly as most African economies are performing, they're nowhere near as bad as they were in the 1980s, when oil plunged to about $10 a barrel, according to Renaissance Capital's chief economist Charlie Robertson. The region is doing so much better, said Robertson. Despite more countries borrowing from the private sector, there has not been a wave of defaults like we saw among emerging market countries back in the 1980s. Continent's Eurobonds have outperformed emerging markets, returning investors about 9% in 2017 compared with 7.7% for developing nations as a whole. The average yield for dollar securities sold by sovereign issuers from the continent fell to 6.14% on August the 3rd, the lowest since 2015, good time for them to be issuing. All rallies usually come to an end, but predicting the peak is hard, said WPP Citigroup. In economic crisis, Angola votes for its first new leader in 38 years. Unofficial result is expected by Friday, but there may be no formal announcement for 2 weeks as ballot boxes wend their way along potholed roads and dirt tracks in a country of 28 million spread across an area twice the size of France. The defeat of the ruling party is almost unimaginable. Suarez de Oliveira, in an email response to questions, the most probable outcome remains an MPLA victory, but with a much enhanced performance by the opposition. How enhanced that performance is will set the tone going forward. D-Day has arrived, Domingos Francisco said Wednesday as he stood in line behind dozens of voters outside one of a handful of new tents that are being used as polling stations in the Rangel neighborhood in Luanda, the capital. I arrived at 5 a.m. because I was anxious to vote. At some stage, the MPLA will have to make good on its promises, otherwise, like Mr. Dos Santos himself, eventually its reign will also end. And they've got serious issues to deal with. South African all shares at a record high. It's up 10.88% this year. Dollar versus rand, I'm cautiously bullish about the rand, 13.1825. I see President Zuma on his way, and therefore I'm bullish. Nigerian all shares up 37.9% year to date. Ghana's stock exchange composite index is up 37.36% year to date. Africa's been performing well, as you can see. On that interview on TV this morning, I asked that we should deconflict our language. It's linguistic warfare everywhere I turn, and I think a deconfliction would be very helpful. Kiprono said, I'm excited about Nairobi. This is the fulcrum of the region. This is the third most important metropolis in Africa. Britam has reported first half earnings per share was down 44.565%. Gross earned premiums were up 6.8%. Total revenue up 15.8%. Profit before tax down 55.375%. Profit after tax down 44.565%. Basic and diluted earnings per share was down 44.565%. They said in their commentary that their performance in the year was resilient in the current market conditions. Total income up 16%, so good headline revenue growth. Core insurance business, which accounts for 66% of the total revenue, remained the key focus, generating revenue growth of 10%. The embedded value as of June 2017 had grown by 20% from December 2016 to close at 13.3 billion. Investment income increased by 15%. Investment in equities returned fair value gains amounting to 2.1 billion, compared to a loss of 328 million in June 2016, and that improvement will further accelerate. Regional businesses contributed revenue of 1.2 billion shillings, 15% of net earned premiums, 12% of total income, and 6% of total assets of the group. Assets under management now are at 124.5 billion shillings. Look, they're the largest listed portfolio. This will be marked up big at the full year mark. They were lapping an unusually strong first half of 2016. I think you buy it on dips. NIC Bank reported first half earnings per share was down 11.944%. Kenya government securities held to maturity increased 38.494%. Kenya government securities available for sale increased 73.141%. This has been a consequence of the rate cap. Loans and advances to customers grew 4.119% to clock 116.76 billion shillings. Profit after tax was down 9.33%. Profit EPS was down 11.944%. They're paying an interim dividend. No, they're not. I think NIC is the bull outlier in the tier 2 banking segment, and therefore I think it is a buy at these sorts of levels and a trailing PE of 5.3. And John, of course, is an alumni of Credit Suisse, and he's a very smart chap. Total Kenya reported first half earnings per share increased 33.33%. Gross sales was up a whopping 46.824%. Profit before tax up 8.13%. Profit after tax up 33.472%. EPS up 33.33%. No interim dividend. They said the company recorded a growth of 33% in net profit. Net sales increased by 51% and a 16% growth in margin. These were strong results on a trading P of 6.5. It's a cheap share. Buy. Kenya shilling is at a 3-month high around the 103.10 level. Nairobi all share turned higher, up 0.58% yesterday. It's up 25.64% year to date. NSE 20 turned higher by 0.37% yesterday, and that's up 26.44%. We're still going higher on a peace dividend. Once again, thank you for stopping by.